Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. Oh, no.
Amateur Traveler, episode 570. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about baths and Banitsa, the Ottoman Empire, communism, and Alexander Nevsky Cathedral as we go to Sofia in Bulgaria.
I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. I'm not really sitting here recording this. I'm on a boat by the time you hear this, but we'll talk more about my travels at the end of this show. But first, let's talk about Bulgaria. I'd like to welcome the show Stephanie Craig from historyfangirl.com, who has come to talk to us about Bulgaria, specifically the region around Sofia. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Chris.
I feel like I should say welcome back to the show because for Stephanie and I, this is the second time we have tried the show because of some problems with the internet in Ukraine way back in May. So we're giving this another go because it was going very well, except for the internet.
And that was a really great show. So it's really a
It was
shame
just that was the best one that we'll never hear. Why should someone go to Bulgaria, and specifically, why should we go to Sofia?
I feel like Sofia is magical. The first time that I went there, I didn't really know anything about it. And I think that sometimes it's those places you have no idea, that you really don't know what to expect, that just can kind of blow you away. I literally went there in November because it was the cheapest Skyscanner flight out of Greece. And I didn't put it together that it was the cheapest one because it was the next country over. I really, in my head, didn't know the geography
We
of the
should
Balkans.
probably talk about the geography then. Other people may not know that. So you're talking about a country right next to Greece?
Right. South of Romania, north of Greece and Turkey, and the Black Sea is on the east. And then on the west, you have Serbia, Kosovo, and Macedonia. I'm not 100% that Kosovo actually borders it, but I'm pretty sure because not all maps show Kosovo. Sometimes they just, yeah.
It may or may not exist, yes.
Yeah. Which is weird because that's where I'm sitting right now. So I definitely see it. Literally, it was like a $40 ticket from Athens, and I found a $400 Airbnb for the month, which is actually a little overpriced, I know now. And I was like, well, cool. I was looking for a place to chill out for a month. And when I got at Sofia, I met so many cool people, and I just fell in love with the architecture. There's these amazing Neo-Byzantine buildings. There's all of these old Turkish buildings. There's Roman ruins in the subway. I hadn't really put it together. I'm a history lover. Obviously, my website is History Fangirl. I hadn't put it together that when you go to Bulgaria, you're really going to kind of the very middle of all of these different things that interested me. So I'm very interested in the history of Rome, the history of Byzantium, the Cold War, World War II. I'm very interested in what happened between the ancient world, between you have the Thracians and then the Greeks, and then you have the Romans coming in, and you just have all of these different things. The Ottoman Empire really interests me. And you think about the Ottoman Empire in Greece a lot, but I hadn't really thought about practically how far the Ottoman Empire really stretched, and that Bulgaria was really in the middle of it. And then you also have all of these really cool Bulgarian stories that people don't know a lot about. And you and I know you know about them because we talked about them before, but the first and second Bulgarian kingdoms are really interesting. It's just a really beautiful, wonderful place with all of this history. And I just think most people outside of Bulgaria just don't know anything about it.
Okay. What kind of itinerary are you going to recommend for us for Sofia?
A lot of cities have a free tour, a free walking tour, but I would highly recommend the one in Sofia. Different cities' walking tours have different reputations based on how they treat their employees, what their business model is. But the one in Sofia, it's an NGO. It's a non-government organization that was created specifically to teach outsiders about Bulgaria. It's a passion project as much as it is a business. They don't pressure you for tips. I don't know if the tips go to the people or if they go back into the NGO, but they're very serious about it and they love it. Full disclosure, about a month ago, I started writing for their blog a little bit, but I had recommended them to you in May when we recorded before I even knew any of them. But the walking tour is a great way to get situated in the city, but also it's actually, this organization is very special to Sofia. And if you end up going outside of Sofia, they are also the people that do them in Plovdiv and a few other cities because their organization just grew. And it's called a 365 organization because they are there, rain or shine, 365 days a year. And they just expanded to 3 tours a day. So pretty much whenever you are up and ready to start your vacation, there's probably a tour. There's a 10 a.m., an 11 a.m., and a 6 p.m.
And I'm assuming this is one of those we just show up and we're showing up at...
You're showing up at the Palace of Justice on Vitosha Boulevard by the Lions. And if you can get to Vitosha Boulevard and get to the Palace of Justice, you're not going to miss the giant lion statues. And it's the one on the left.
Okay. Where all is that walking tour going to take us? And by the way, I would certainly second the recommendation of starting with some sort of orienting tour like a walking tour or big bus tour if they have one of those. But where are we going to go on this tour?
So you're going to walk and you're going to see probably 90% of the buildings that I think you would want to see. You're not going to be able to go in them. So you're going to want to do more on your own later in a lot of these places, but you're going to get situated. You're going to hear some really great stories about how these buildings came to be. You're going to hit some of my favorites. So you start out at the Palace of Justice, which is beautiful, but looks kind of like a courtroom. But you're on Vitosha Boulevard, and Vitosha Boulevard is this vibrant street that one of my friends said she had been in Bucharest and she felt like she didn't know what was going on. And she got to Sofia and she went to Vitosha Boulevard and she's like, oh, this place is where I'm supposed to be. If you're in Sofia and you're on Vitosha Boulevard, you feel like everything's all right. And then in the distance, you can see Vitosha Mountain, which the boulevard is named that because they thought that they were going to build the boulevard all the way to the mountain. And then, of course, they didn't because their infrastructure projects don't always go according to plan. But you start there. And I'm not exactly sure about the order, but you're going to see where they do the changing of the guard. The changing of the guard in Sofia is not something you can't miss. It's not that big a deal. They'll take you inside and then you can see a church that's basically hidden from view. And they'll explain to you what happened to the churches during communist times. and why some of them are hidden but not destroyed.
Hmm.
They'll take you to the central baths, which unfortunately is not a bath anymore, the way that they have them in like Budapest and other parts of Europe. It's a museum now, but it's a Neo-Byzantine building that's just beautiful. It's multicolored. And when you see it, it's a special building.
And when you say Neo-Byzantine, we're used to Neo-Roman here, or Romanesque. We're talking about something that's built again in the Roman style, or in this time in the Byzantine style with the domes, and was built in modern times. How close was that?
Pretty good. So
Okay.
like Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, which is the building most people associate with Sofia, which you also see on this tour, has the big domes, and it's got big rusted teal domes because they were copper, and it's gold and white and beautiful. And then this building is multicolored. I want to say brick, but off the top of my head, I don't know. There's a couple other buildings in the city that look like this. And then it also has the same color scheme,
Okay.
though not the exact same style as you'll see at Rila Monastery. So you definitely look at this building and you feel like you're somewhere different than Western Europe, but at the same time, it feels grand and sophisticated.
Okay.
You don't go in the museum there on the walking tour, but you do get to go up. So Sofia is built on minerals, hot springs. So most major cities in Europe are on like a river or a bay or some form of water.
Mm-hmm.
But this city is actually built on just hot springs, and you'll see the hot springs and they let you taste it and they explain to you about it. There's another place across the street where you'll actually see locals taking jugs to go fill with the mineral hot spring water to take home, because I don't know the science, but there is a strong belief in Sofia that it is medicinal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that is true or not, but it's very much a part of the city. And then there's lots of other parts of Bulgaria where there are hot springs and there are baths that still work. So about an hour outside of, well, no, probably closer to 2 hours. If you want to go to a mineral bath, there are many in Western Bulgaria.
Okay. Why don't we save that for when we get out of town? I will make a note of that. What else are we going to see on the tour?
So you're going to see Sofia Church, which is the church that Sofia was named after. There is a giant St. Sophia statue you'll see on the tour, and they'll tell you the story about the statue and why they believe it's a mistake, even though I think it's awesome. But you'll also hear about...
Wait. Why they believe it's a mistake? They believe that it doesn't represent Sophia, or that she isn't a great saint to have, or I'm not getting you.
The statue of Sophia, first of all, it's very sexualized for a statue of a saint. She's beautiful. She's like black and gold, but like very sexualized. And she's covered in what they believe are pagan iconography, because she's got like a bird on her arm and a laurel wreath. So it's not exactly Christian, not the way that a Saint Sophia should be. She doesn't look like Saint Sophia. You'll see Saint Sophia in other places in the city, and she is not this beautiful, like she looks like a statue of a Greek goddess, basically.
Okay.
And the city is not named after Saint Sophia. The city is named after the Sofia Church, which was, Sophia means wisdom.
Right.
So the city doesn't actually have a connection to Saint Sophia.
Okay.
It's really funny. It's beautiful. I think it's one of the best statues the city could be, but it is interesting, and the church doesn't love it.
Well, and my impression here is we're in an old church, older than the one we're going to talk about here in a minute. We're in something that I think I read it was from the 600s.
Yes, it's very old. And if you go in, it's not very decorated the way a lot of really old Orthodox churches are, with tons of frescoes, because it's had to be restored. And there's a bell outside that was used for some different important historical events. But it is a very old church. It's not particularly picturesque, which is why people don't take a lot of photos of it. But they would say, oh, there's Sofia. And that's how the city changed its name from Serdica, which is what the Romans called it, to Sofia, which is its modern name.
Okay. And this goes back even before the Bulgars came in, because this is from the 6th century and the Bulgars came in a century later. So this is older than Bulgaria being Bulgarian.
Yes. So this is Byzantine,
Romanesque, yeah.
Romans, the descendants of Thracians who are becoming Christians. I want to say it's the oldest building in the city, but there's another really old church that might be.
You think second oldest is what it said, yeah.
I mean, if you love old Orthodox churches, which I really do, Bulgaria is a really great place to explore because there's a lot of them.
Okay. What else?
So then you'll get to Alexander Nevsky. You'll see also along the way the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Alexander Nevsky Cathedral is just beautiful. It's big and it's bold, and it was built after Bulgaria was freed from the Ottoman Empire. So
they weren't hiding this one.
yeah, no, this isn't something that had to get stuck beside it behind a communist building. I mean, it's just beautiful. And in the basement is an icon museum that's supposed to have like the largest collection of Bulgarian icons, either Bulgarian or Eastern European icons. I mean, it's really cool.
And you say it was named after a Russian.
It's named after Alexander Nevsky, the Russian Alexander Nevsky, because the Russians helped free Bulgaria from the Turks. And so there are a lot of monuments to Bulgaria's relationship with Russia that are pre-communism that the city has some weird feelings about, because obviously the last 50 years weren't the best for that relationship.
Okay. They felt different about the Russians before they were part of the Eastern Bloc than they may now, is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more complicated now.
Yeah. The Russians helped liberate the Bulgarians from 500 years of Turkish rule. And that is very important. There's a statue to the Tsar Liberator that I don't know if you see on this tour, but it's right by the end of it. So you can go see it if you don't. I know you see it on some like communist tours and stuff. It's to the Tsar for helping liberate them. And then you have this weird communist history. And now Bulgaria just last year banned displaying communist symbols and iconography. They aren't really protecting most of their communist monuments, even the really cool ones that people wish they would save. But the statue of Tsar Liberator has flowers put at the base of it. The relationship between Bulgaria and Russia is very interesting, and it goes back when the Kievan Rus and the Bulgarians were fighting with the Byzantine Empire. I mean, it is a relationship that is more complicated than I will probably ever understand.
Okay. What else are we going to see?
The Alexander Nevsky, one of the cool things about it is that it's in the middle of roads. There's no buildings around it. It's built on an island. So if you're a travel photographer lover and you're so sick of all these beautiful churches that you can't get pictures of because
they were built in the middle of a medieval city. Right.
I mean, you can stand in the middle of the road if you go in the middle of a weekday when there's not much traffic and get an amazing unobstructed shot from almost any direction. It's really cool. And there are some rooftop bars, and I can't think of the names of any of them, but there are some cool rooftop bars you can also take shots from above where it looks really cool. So if you're a photography lover, I would definitely just spend some time at Alexander Nevsky Cathedral. And if you go inside, I don't think they charge. Most churches don't charge to go in. If you go inside, they'll say no cameras, and then you'll see every single person taking pictures inside. So that's kind of up to you how you want to proceed. There's another church that's really beautiful that you also see on the tour that is a Russian Orthodox church that is to Nicholas the Wonder Maker. Do not try to take pictures inside there because they will come and yell at you. But if it's a Bulgarian church, they may not really care.
Okay.
So that's what I would do on the first day. Then depending on if you take in a morning tour and you've got time in the afternoon, you may want to add something else in, maybe just a nice dinner on Vitosha Boulevard. But if you took the 6 p.m. tour, I would just go get a drink and prepare to get up the next day. But I don't like to pack too much in on the first day.
Do you have a recommended place for meals or for a drink on Vitosha Boulevard?
So on Vitosha, they're all okay, but not great.
Okay.
But fun. They all kind of serve the same thing, and they're all kind of the same level. You're not going to spend much money. You're going to get something that's tasty, but not fantastic. If you want something really good, there's a restaurant right off of Vitosha called Boom Burger. That is a American hamburger style place that they love. I love it. I probably go there like once a month. And then if you want like a nice restaurant on Rakovsky Boulevard, which is a little bit further away, there's a really great sushi restaurant called Hamachi that I know some of the guys that work there, they won Bulgaria's International Restaurant of the Year award last year. They're really good. So if you want something nice and fancy,
So you're not
go to
recommending
Hamachi.
Bulgaria food is really what you're saying.
I like Bulgarian food.
Okay. What is, when we say they all serve the same thing, what is the same thing?
Oh, so the places on Vitucia Boulevard are mostly serving pizzas
Oh, okay.
that not in Italy, but all the countries kind of by Italy all sell the
Sure.
same level of, yeah, it's like that. It's mostly places with bars and open air seating that serve food because people are hungry, but not because they're fine dining.
Okay.
There are better restaurants in other parts
If
of
I
town.
was looking for good Bulgarian food, what would I be looking for and where would I look?
If I was wanting to go to somewhere that was really tasty, I don't know if I would go to a pure Bulgarian restaurant. I would go to maybe one of the more fusion mixed with Bulgarian food. So there's a restaurant called Gastronaut 33 that I really love. It's advertised as Mediterranean, but it's really not. It's really a mixture of Bulgarian and more traditional Mediterranean food, but it's really good and not expensive. You can get a really great meal in Bulgaria for not that much money. Sushi's surprisingly good. Italian food, a lot of Italian food places are really good. There's a place called Mr. Pizza.
Okay.
That is, it's one of these places that sells everything. So you think it wouldn't do anything good, but then everything actually is really good. And they've got a great mix of traditional Bulgarian, but also other things for other people who aren't necessarily. It's just, if you're in Bulgaria and you want traditional Bulgarian, if you're a vegetarian or something, you're not going to get tons of options.
So my only hint here is that traditional Bulgarian is not vegetarian friendly. So what would be a typical dish that I would order if I wanted to order traditional Bulgarian?
My favorite thing is just to get banitsa and eat it for lunch, which is phyllo dough and cheese, and you can get it in the Subway.
We had this
so
conversation.
Good.
I had this in Bosnia.
It's so good.
And it's pretty inexpensive.
You can literally buy it at relay shops, which are all over Europe, but in Bulgaria, they sell banitsa. And then you buy it by the kilogram.
Right.
So kind of watch as they just kind of point out how much, because you're not buying a kilogram more. And then if you want...
Well, and that's what fooled us, is we looked at the back of the menu and it was by the kilogram and we thought it was by the person. And I went and got more money and then found out that it wasn't 14 euros per person. I was paying 14 euros for 5 people, including probably just water to drink or something like that. So in Bosnia, I know it was that cheap and good.
Yeah.
We've been recommended by somebody who was from the region. Okay, now I've got you.
Yeah, it's so good. And then also something else they're really proud of, Greek yogurt. If you've heard of Greek yogurt, it's actually Bulgarian yogurt.
Okay.
The yeast that makes Greek yogurt special is a Bulgarian yeast. And it's just because centuries of Turks, Greeks, and Bulgarians all commingling, and then thinking Greek is a better marketing term, but that's actually Bulgarian yogurt. So you see people eating yogurt a lot. They also have yogurt drink that sometimes I've had to drink. It's not my favorite. One time I thought it was milk and it was yogurt, which was different than I was expecting.
And that is absolutely coming from the Ottoman influence. You'll find that all over Turkey, that is the very popular drink. It's sour.
It just doesn't taste like milk, which is just what I thought that I was going to be drinking. So
it is better when you know what you were tasting, when you're expecting it. I could well imagine that. Okay. Yeah. You also mentioned communist tours, which caught my fancy there. There are communist tours that I can take, even though they are starting to hide the communist stuff.
Yes. There's a couple different things you can do. The company that does the free walking tour has a communist tour that I want to say is maybe 18 leva if you use the discount you get from going to the walking tour. So about $9, $9.50.
Okay.
That's really cool. That's literally just a 3-hour walking tour, and they walk you to all of the different places. If you want to do like a communist themed day, which I would recommend, I love doing things like that. There's a socialist museum that it's by the neighborhood, this neighborhood called Iztok. I'm not sure if it's exactly in that neighborhood, but if you want to go to the socialist museum, it'll be really easy to find it. And it's where they actually put the big statue of Lenin, and they rounded up all the socialist statues and socialist art, put it in this museum. I want to say the museum cost $2 to get in, but when I got there,
so
they
about
did not.
$1.
Yeah, about $1.
Okay.
They did not actually ask me to pay any money. It was really weird. It was like they forgot that they're now a for-profit institution, that they need to generate income. And me and my friend went, and these two older women, that is kind of what you would picture. Like, these women could have been straight out of 1965. They point us to this projector room and they tell us we have to go in and watch this movie that's basically a propaganda film, but it's not translated into English and it's old footage. It was really cool, but it was really weird. And they told us to shush when we were like talking to each other, even though we were the only two people watching it.
And you were watching a film you couldn't understand in terms of the sound. Yeah, okay.
It was like Mayday Parade.
Okay.
But I don't know exactly what they were, but that's what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go and you walk around, you see all the pictures of Lenin, and you walk out, and the statues are all outside. They're cool. So if you've heard of Memento Park in Budapest, this place is a lot like that, but a lot easier to get to. I found Memento Park to be really difficult to get to. So if you like communist history, go to the Socialist Museum, or it might be officially the Museum of Socialism or something, but if you Google it, you'll find it.
Mm-hmm.
So the communist tour that the 365 organization does is only a few days a week. So if that doesn't work out for your schedule, or you want to try something different, I know there are companies that do the tours in the old communist cars.
Okay.
There are companies that do them. And then there are communist monuments that are not on the tours because they're a little bit out of the way. If you do all that and you still want to see a little bit more of the Bells Monument, you can get there via public transit, or you can take like a $10 cab ride, which is a really cool, weird monument on the edge of town that was built in the 80s, maybe.
And when you say doing the tour in the old communist cars, I know if I was in Germany, I'd be in a Trabant. If I was in Russia, I'd be in a Lada. What would I be in Bulgaria?
I think they're called Trabants in Bulgaria,
So
but
the
I
ones
don't
made
know.
in Germany. Okay. Little tiny cars.
I'm not sure if that's what they're called or if that's what they're marketed under, because people would know the term.
Okay. Got it.
That's what they're marketed on via tour or
So
something.
it's like a Trabi tour. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I did the walk with the 365 organization. That I paid for that last November before I was associated with them. So I didn't do the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also, I would recommend a blog. There's a guy who lives in Varna, which is a different part of Bulgaria, who's British, but who has done extensive research and is actually getting a PhD in communist monuments. His blog is called the Bohemian Blog. And I went on a day tour with him to specifically two communist monuments in Bulgaria. He doesn't do that. That was a special event, but his blog has tons of cool information. The Bohemian Blog is very niche to monuments and obscure things, but the guy who writes it is very knowledgeable and has been studying this for a long time. Having gone on this trip with him, I was blown away by what he knows. So if you specifically are interested in communist travel in Sofia, I would definitely add his blog as part of your research.
Okay. What else do you recommend we see in Sofia?
So there's a history museum that's out in this neighborhood called Boiana. In Boiana, there's a couple cool things you want to do. So if you go out there, I would go to the history museum, which is actually in the former communist president's house. So it's a really weird, grand building, but it's weird brutalist, not weird neoclassical, which isn't what you think of when you think of somebody who was like in a presidential palace. So it's cool and weird. And they've got objects from the Thracian period and prehistoric times through, I don't know if it goes all the way up to today, but they've got interesting stuff through at least the middle part of the last century.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in Boiana, you can do the History Museum. You can do Boiana Church, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is a church that was built, I believe it was built in the 8th or 10th century. And then the 11th or 12th century, they added something to it. They added it a few times. It's got really beautiful frescoes from the 12th century.
Okay.
And the ticket, I want to say, is maybe $8 or $9 to get in, maybe a little less, but it's worth it. And it's really beautiful, especially if you love old churches and want to see the frescoes are really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And on the grounds of this church are a couple of things. There's a American sequoia tree, or maybe two sequoia trees, which were a gift. And I still don't know all of the history behind it, but I just think that's so strange. You're just looking at these trees. There's the grave of Queen Eleanora. After the Russians liberated Bulgaria. They had a third monarchy, the third Bulgarian kingdom started. And the queen helped to restore this church and make sure that it wasn't destroyed. And so her grave is there, which is just kind of crazy. And the gift shop there is tiny and weird and cool. And it's just a cool little spot. You probably could go there and do everything for 45 minutes. The only thing is they will make you wait to go inside because they only take 10 people in at a time. And so you buy your ticket and find out, if you're in the next group or the group after that. And then in Boyana, there is a movie studio that you can't go to, but there's a restaurant called Cinecita that is a really just delicious Italian restaurant. And because they have this movie studio, you sometimes run into American movie stars there randomly. So I have a friend who sent me a picture of Nicolas Cage just eating lunch there. If you want to randomly run into an American movie star, I would say you probably have a 10% chance if you go to this place, because if there is an American movie star in town, this is where they're eating, and it's called Cinecita. And also it's just delicious. And they have like a summer garden. So if you're there during spring or summer, it's a great place to eat.
Okay.
Other highlights, I would definitely do there's an international art museum. It's called National Gallery 500, and it's behind Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, and it deserves 2 or 3 hours on its own. It's got a good international collection, but it also has Bulgarian art from like the 19th and 20th century that I think is some of the coolest art that I never studied in art class. When I took art history classes, it was never, they're weird and vibrant. They've got these great colors. You can definitely tell that there was, during the 19th century, Bulgaria had its own art scene that was just different and cool and weird. So I would highly recommend that. See some other highlights that you definitely don't want to miss. If you like hiking or like outdoors, I don't particularly like the outdoors, but if you do, you should do something on Vitosha Boulevard or Vitosha Mountain. So they have a free hiking tour on Vitosha Mountain. It's not for me, but it might be for you.
Is there a trail that you dislike the least?
I really don't get
I was going to ask your
hiking as an
favorite, but
activity.
okay.
There's a waterfall. So, I mean, if you do the free tour, if you like the outdoors at all, you will like this. And there's a waterfall and it's cool and it's free. There is the Kirill e Methodi. So St. Cyril and St. Methodius created the Galgolitic alphabet, which is the original Cyrillic alphabet. Cyrillic was created from it. And there's a cool statue of them in front of the library downtown. If you want to take a picture of them, I think it's always usually a good picture too if you like photography. If you like old markets, I would say the Central Market and the Jinsky Bazaar are kind of near each other. And if you've ever gone to a market in the Middle East or in a city where people are really trying to sell you something, it's worth going to a Bulgarian market because it will feel super weird because nobody's trying to really sell you anything and they're not really sure why you're standing in front of their booth and they don't really care that you're it's really fun to shop and not be like completely overwhelmed.
Not high pressure. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you like luxurious fancy things, like you like spa days and things like that, there's lots of spas and you're going to get a really good experience for the amount of money that you spend. That's one of the things I love about Eastern Europe, but especially Bulgaria, is I feel like you can go and have a really fancy, luxurious time and feel like it's just as fancy as you would get in like New York or Philadelphia. And then you pay half of that.
Okay.
So there are some really cool spas. And if that's something that you like to do, I definitely would do it while you were there.
Okay. Anything else we want to see in the city? You made allusions to Roman ruins in the subway.
So if you go to Serdica Station, there are Roman ruins, and they found them when they were trying to either dig the subway for the first time or expand it. There was a hotel where they actually found a Roman stadium when they were digging the hotel. And the hotel was allowed to still build itself, and they didn't stop and say, hey, we should excavate this giant amphitheater. They just let it happen. But the hotel,
and that would seem to be the Arena de Serdica Residence Hotel.
Yes. So in this hotel, they have put plexiglass almost, or glass over what they did find. So when you go in, you'll see Roman ruins in really weird places, because Bulgaria has more Roman ruins than almost any country besides Rome, because it's so big and was part of the Roman Empire for such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you go to Plovdiv, which is a city about 2 hours outside Sofia, you'll see Roman ruins that are preserved, but then you'll also see Roman ruins at the back of an H&M, which is just, I think they just decided, like, we can't not have any commerce just because we're completely covered in Roman ruins. So
Okay.
it's cool. I mean, it's weird, but it's cool. If you love history, to see how people live on top of it is just interesting.
And then did you have some recommendations for where we would go out of town?
Let's say you're in Sofia for like a week. I would spend a day at Rila Monastery. You can either rent a car and drive there. It's about a 2-hour drive, and it's really easy, flat roads until you get to the mountains. And then the mountain roads are not bad. They're just kind of straight. And if you drive yourself, you'll have time to go either to the Strobe pyramids, which are these weird rocks that are by there, or get out a little bit more and see a village. But Rila Monastery it's kind of the heart of Bulgaria. The original monastery dates back all the way to St. Ivan Rilsky, who was a hermit in the late 900s. And then people, after he died, people who had come to like worship with him created this monastery. And it was patronized by the Bulgarian kings. It was even left alone by the rulers of the Ottoman Empire. And there was a fire in the 19th century. So the original church burned down, and they built this gorgeous Neo-Byzantine, black and yellow, completely covered in frescoes church. And if you Google Bulgaria, it's this church is usually the one that comes up, and it is just beautiful.
UNESCO World Heritage Site.
It is a UNESCO site. So Bulgaria, Sofia, actually the area, Sofia just got a third one too.
Oh, okay.
This is the second one that you want to make sure you hit. And there's a museum there. The first time I went, I missed the museum. I would suggest to go into the museum and see objects from the monastery's history. They have these weird, cool old guns that they used to protect themselves with. And the museum is cooler than I thought it would be.
The frescoes are, if you're not looking at the picture version of this, then Google it and go find some pictures of this monastery. It's very beautiful in a very Romanesque Byzantine style.
That building is just kind of the symbol. I mean, so many Bulgarians see it as like a symbol of their country because it's 1,200 years old. Not that particular building, but the monastery is 1,200 years old, and it has survived the Ottoman Empire and the Byzantine Empire, and it has survived communism, and it survived World War II. I mean, it's beautiful. If you're out there and you're going to eat somewhere, when you're driving away, the restaurant that's the very first one on your left is really the only one you'll see. It's okay. It's not great, but it's probably the only one around for a while. So if you're really hungry, go ahead and eat there. Just FYI. You can also get tours from the city that will take you there and explain everything to you. And it kind of depends on how you want to travel. If you just want to get done Rila Monastery, a lot of the tours will take you to Bojana Church first, and then Rila Monastery, and then lunch, and bring you back. If you want to do more stuff out in the area, rent a car, and driving in Bulgaria is really very easy.
Okay.
So that's the first day trip I would do, the most important day trip. And then if you have time for a second day trip, you can either rent a car or take a 2-hour bus to Plovdiv, which is kind of like a cultural, cool city. It's developed a reputation on the digital nomad backpacker trail as being cool and hip place to go. They have the largest and best preserved Roman theater there.
Okay. Which it looks like they're still using for performances sometimes.
Randomly, although probably not randomly. It's probably historically correct, but they found this theater across the street from the music school.
Okay.
But of course, that probably was a music school because somebody probably has associated that spot with music for 2,000 years or something, and subconsciously. But they excavated this giant theater right across the street from a music school, so they use it. And Plovdiv is a UNESCO World Heritage tentative site, so it's not its own site. I don't know exactly how it works. They may be in the future at some point, I guess, if they renominated. And the Roman ruins there are cool. Besides the theater, they have a hippodrome that has been preserved, and that's the ruins you see inside the H&M. But you also can see one of the ends of it is out, and then they have tons of old mosques and a statue that the Russians put up during communist times that they all want to take down. They have some of the coolest, weirdest street art that I've seen. A guy went and painted all of these famous Bulgarians on the side of this mountain that are really cool.
Okay.
If you have time, I wouldn't cram it in instead of really experiencing Sofia. But if you're going to have extra days, Plovdiv is the next place I would go.
Okay. And then you said hippodrome. I just want to add in for somebody who doesn't know, a hippodrome would be where they do the chariot races.
Yes, exactly. Cooler than the theater, the chariot races, yes. And then if you want to do anything else in the area, there are wineries that you can go visit. Bulgaria has a pretty cool wine scene. There are spas that are around. There's lots of little places you can go and rent that you can. And another blog that I would recommend that's a local Bulgarian blog that's in English is Kashkaval Tourist. This guy named, I think his name is Chodor, has written some really cool stuff. And he goes a little bit deeper than a lot of the general international blogs. He's very specific about Bulgaria and cool things to do there and traditions and foods. And he's like a cool person too. So I would check out his blog if you're interested in packing in a little bit more in the region outside of Sofia. And then if you're really interested in adding a little bit more, Bashko is a ski town a little bit outside of Sofia. I'm not a skier. I think I would break my leg. But a lot of people love it.
Your problem is they do skiing in the outdoors. So
yeah. I had a friend who broke her leg in Switzerland 2 years ago. And she stayed with me for 6 weeks while she recovered from surgery. So I think I'm never skiing again.
Well, maybe if you get to Dubai, where there's an article in the Amateur Traveler about the indoor ski place, that would be more your speed. So
that would definitely be more likely to get my attention. Yes. I don't want to fall off an actual mountain.
We need to start wrapping this up. Anything else we want to cover before we get to some wrap up kind of questions?
If you are planning a trip to Sofia and you want to understand a Bulgarian and the way that they think and maybe how the country feels about itself, there is a writer who grew up in Bulgaria and then moved and went to school in Arkansas and lives in Texas named Marcel Pankov. And he wrote a short story collection called East of the West and a novel called Stork Mountain. And for my brain, having grown up in the Midwest and moving to Bulgaria, he understands how to explain Bulgaria to Americans. And the novel and the stories are just beautiful. So if you're to the point where you're like, yes, this is where I want to go, what's a good book I can read? That's who I would suggest.
Excellent. You talked about the people. Best way on a 1-week trip to meet Bulgarians?
Go on the walking tour because you're going to meet other travelers and so you'll have more hostile experiences. But also the Bulgarians that run that, they're required to be Bulgarians who speak very good English.
Oh, okay.
So you can get some good ideas there. Bulgarians love bars and clubs.
Okay.
There's a really great Facebook group called Foreigners in Sofia and Friends that you can probably join before your trip and maybe even get acquainted with a few before you get there.
Cool. You're standing in the prettiest spot in Sofia. Do I have to ask where you're standing and what you're looking at?
No, I'm going to say something different. So Alexander Nevsky is definitely beautiful and I love it.
That's where I thought you were going to go. Okay.
But I would say the courtyard at Boyana Church is really, really stunningly lovely, especially on a foggy morning. It has its own kind of magic.
Excellent. When you were talking about Boyana Church and I was looking at the pictures, it really reminds me of Saint Savior in Kora from Istanbul, which is my favorite church in Istanbul. So I think I would quite enjoy it.
It's really special. And one thing I did forget to mention, so Bulgaria got its 10th UNESCO site. Sofia got its 3rd. So the extension of the primeval beech forests, one of those is right outside of Sofia now, about, I want to say like 30 minutes away. I haven't been yet, but if you love UNESCO sites.
So that's the one that's a multi-country one that's also in Poland and Germany, if I'm remembering correctly.
Correct.
Okay.
Now there's forests in Bulgaria are protected, but one is right outside of Sofia. So if you love checking off UNESCO sites, which I do, I'm really excited to go back and hit that one.
Excellent. One thing that makes you laugh and say only in Bulgaria.
My apartment is renovated really beautifully. It's $250 a month, and it's completely renovated. And inside the apartment, it's just lovely. And then you walk into the building, and we only have electricity in our building. The 2 days a year it's getting inspected, which is just so
What?
it's so Bulgarian. Like, to have this beautiful rented apartment in a building that literally where the owner will only pay for electricity on inspection day. They do the things that matter really, really well. And if they just think something doesn't matter, it just doesn't. They just don't do it.
I would imagine you were working from Bulgaria for a while. I imagine that was more difficult.
So my apartment, my actual apartment, has electricity. But if you go into the hallway,
hallways. Okay.
So if you have your phone, your cell phone
So
is also very important.
Yeah.
Yes. It is your flashlight so that you can get, and there's four locks between the street level and my apartment door, because there is a first gate, a building door, a gate on the floor to get into the floor. And so it's a lot of key work in the dark, but I got really good at it.
Well, that is different. One warning you would give about going to Bulgaria. One thing you should know.
So take taxis. They are cheap, but watch them.
Okay.
Most of them are really good. And if you call ahead, if you call and order a taxi, that person is on a job, on the clock, on their business. They're not going to really do anything. And mostly if you get a taxi from the airport, 99% of the time they're good too. Although I heard one horror story for someone. But if you just order a taxi on the street, be prepared for them to tell you whatever price they think. So for example, to get from Vitosha Boulevard to my apartment is 4 leva.
Okay. So $2.
Yeah, I've been asked for 15 leva.
Okay.
Now, one time a guy asked me that beforehand, and I just laughed at him, walked away, hit my hand. So I ended up actually injured. And I was just like, you're a crook. But sometimes it's they'll turn on their meter. I think they have secret buttons in the meters. You really do have to watch. And if you know that a price is different than what they're telling you, just pay what you know the right prices and walk away. So sometimes people will drop me off in my apartment and they'll be 15 leva, and I'll just pay them 5 and be like, you're a crook. And if you mess with me, and I'll just walk away. But it's hard if you're a tourist the first day to know
right.
that that's really right. So I really would spend the 20 cents to call on your cell phone and order the taxi, as opposed to just hailing one off the street. Even if it's the same company you know is good, it's just so stressful to worry about it that I would just call a taxi ahead of time.
Okay. If you had to summarize Sofia in 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
Turquoise.
Turquoise.
I just every time I think of Sofia, I think of Alexander Nevsky.
And the color of that. Okay.
It's in my head. It's impossible to get it out of my head. So I would say turquoise, magical, and introverted, because people really stick to themselves, which I really love as a traveler. Sometimes you just don't want to explain yourself to 50 people, and you don't want every store you walk into to be bombarded with questions and try to be sold something. I really like that Bulgarians allow you just to live, and they just live. And there's a honey store on my block, and the guy that works there, he sits outside and he feeds the birds, and he really couldn't care if you ever bought honey from him or not. He waves hi, but he's not nosy. He's not who are you and why do you live here? And it's really lovely after sometimes being in places with lots of high energy and people are just in your business, just to have a very quiet, beautiful space to relax in.
Excellent. You just talked some people into going and others out of it. That's useful to know. Our guest again has been Stephanie Craig. Stephanie, where can people read more about your travels?
You can go to historyfangirl.com. There's articles about visiting Rila and about visiting Bojana. And then in a few months, not today, but in a few months, I'm going to have a website called Sofia Adventures, which is all built out, but there's no text on it yet. But the website's actually designed where I'll have more tips about Sofia. So if you're listening to this today, go to historyoffangirl.com. If you're listening to this in the future, you can also check out
I believe
Sophia
they are by
Adventure.
definition listening to this in the future. And when we talk about in the future, you already have 7 episodes of a podcast recorded. Will there be a podcast on your website by the time this comes out a month from now?
Hopefully.
Okay.
If not exactly a month from now, maybe like a month and a week. So around this time, one of the episodes we recorded is about the history of Rila Monastery. So that's not going to be the first one that comes out. But if you subscribe and you're interested, there'll be a 1 hour about Rila Monastery coming out in the first few weeks.
Okay. So if you found there was way too much history in this podcast, don't listen to History Fangirl. If you found there was not enough, then check out History Fangirl podcast, which just came to iTunes right before this version came up, I'm hoping.
Hopefully.
Stephanie, thanks so much for coming on again, giving it another try, and talking about your obvious love for Bulgaria and for Sofia.
Thank you so much, Chris. This is really an honor.
At the time that I'm recording this, and this is 2017 and the last day of July, I've got a number of travel plans ahead of me, and I'm telling you this just in case you happen to be in any of the cities that I'm going to. I get on a plane tomorrow and fly to Barcelona for a Holland America cruise of the Western Mediterranean, ending up in Rome. And then I'm in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. They're also in August. And then over Labor Day weekend, I'll be in New York City, followed by Nova Scotia and Quebec. In October, I'll be at the TBEX conference in Ireland, and then at the Albuquerque Balloon Festival. And then, of course, in November, I'll be meeting some of you with me in India, and I hope more of you can join me for that as well. If I happen to be in your town, if I named any place that sounds familiar, drop me an email. Let's see if we can get together for coffee. With that, we're going to end this episode of The Amateur Traveler. If you have any questions, send an email to host@amateurtraveler.com, or better yet, leave a comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com. And thanks so much for listening.